Nathan Cross sat in the back corner of the elegant wedding venue, wishing he could disappear into the ivory-colored walls. The champagne glass in his hand trembled slightly as another group of wedding guests turned to stare at him, their whispers carried by the afternoon breeze. He should never have come to Rebecca's wedding. His assistant had invited him months ago, back when attending a normal social event seemed possible. Is that really Nathan Cross? The billionaire guy from the magazines? I heard he's worth over $2 billion. The familiar knot formed in his stomach. These people didn't see Nathan the person. They saw dollar signs, opportunity, a chance to get close to money and power. He'd learned this lesson the hard way after 3 relationships that ended the moment women discovered his bank account meant more to them than his heart. The last one, Cassandra, had been the worst. She'd pretended to love him for 8 months, even said yes when he proposed, only to sell their engagement story to a tabloid magazine before running off with his business rival. The headline still haunted him. Billionaire's fiancé reveals his pathetic romantic secrets. Nathan pulled out his phone, ready to call his driver. He could make an excuse, send Rebecca a generous gift, and retreat back to his penthouse where people couldn't hurt him. But as he stood to leave, a woman's voice stopped him. "Excuse me, but you look like you need rescuing." He turned to see a beautiful African-American woman with warm brown eyes and a gentle smile. She wore a simple navy blue dress that matched her professional demeanor, and she carried a tablet and earpiece that marked her as someone working the event. "I'm sorry?" Nathan asked, confused by her directness. The woman glanced around at the guests who were still stealing looks at him. "The vultures are circling, and you look like you'd rather be anywhere else. I'm Simone Parker, the wedding coordinator. I've seen this before with high-profile guests." Nathan's defenses rose immediately. Another person who recognized him, another potential gold digger. "I don't know what you're talking about." But Simone stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Look, I don't know who you are or why everyone's staring, but you seem like a decent guy who just wants to enjoy a wedding in peace. Those people over there are taking pictures of you with their phones, and that woman in the red dress has been trying to work up the courage to accidentally bump into you for 10 minutes. Nathan followed her gaze and saw exactly what she described. His heart sank further. "Here's what I suggest," Simone continued, her voice kind but businesslike. "Pretend you're with me. I need to check on the reception setup anyway. Walk with me, laugh at something I say, and they'll think you're taken. Most people won't bother a man who's obviously with someone." The offer stunned him. In 3 years, no one had offered to help him without wanting something in return. "Why would you do that?" "Because everyone deserves to feel comfortable at a wedding," she said simply. "Besides, I could use the company while I work. These events can be lonely when you're the only one working." Nathan studied her face, searching for signs of deception or hidden motives. But Simone's expression remained open and honest. She wasn't looking at him like a prize to be won. She was looking at him like a human being who needed help. "You don't even know me," he said quietly. "I know enough. You're here alone, you're clearly uncomfortable, and you haven't tried to hit on me or show off your wallet in the 30 seconds we've been talking. That puts you ahead of most men I meet at these things." For the first time in months, Nathan felt something close to hope. Maybe, just for one afternoon, he could pretend to be normal. Maybe he could have a conversation with someone who didn't know about his money or his past. "What would I need to do?" he asked. Simone's smile widened. "Just stay close, look happy, and help me make sure Rebecca has the perfect wedding day. Can you handle that?" Nathan looked around the venue one more time. The whispers had grown louder, and he could see phones being discreetly pointed in his direction. The thought of spending the next 4 hours being hunted by strangers made his chest tight with anxiety. But this woman, this kind stranger, was offering him a lifeline. "Yes," he said, surprising himself with how much he wanted this chance. "I can handle that." Simone extended her hand to him. "Then let's go save your afternoon, mystery man." As Nathan took her hand, he felt the stares of the room shift from predatory interest to disappointed acceptance. The woman in the red dress turned away and the phone cameras lowered. For the first time since arriving, Nathan could breathe. "Thank you," he said, meaning it more than she could possibly know. "Don't thank me yet," Simone replied with a wink. "You haven't seen how demanding I can be when there's a wedding to coordinate." But Nathan was already smiling, feeling lighter than he had in years. Maybe this wedding wouldn't be a disaster after all. Could it be that simple? Could one person's kindness really change everything? As Nathan walked beside Simone toward the reception area, he found himself hoping the answer was yes. Simone led Nathan through the crowd with practiced ease, her hands still in his as they navigated between tables set with crystal glasses and white rose centerpieces. She moved with the confidence of someone who belonged here, someone who knew every detail of the event. "First stop, the catering station," she said, glancing at her tablet. "The chef needs to confirm the vegetarian count, and I need to make sure the cake table is properly positioned for the cutting ceremony." Nathan found himself genuinely interested in the logistics. "How long have you been coordinating weddings?" 3 years full-time, but I've been helping with events since I was 16. My aunt owns the business and she taught me everything." Simone paused beside the catering table, where a stressed-looking chef in white was frantically arranging small plates. "Carlos, how are we doing on timing?" "Perfect, Miss Parker. 20 minutes until we serve the appetizers, and the main course will be ready exactly when you need it." "You're amazing," Simone said warmly. "This is going to be Rebecca's dream reception." Nathan watched how she interacted with the staff. There was no condescension, no impatience, just genuine appreciation and clear communication. It was refreshing after years of watching people either fawn over him or treat service workers poorly to impress him. "Is Rebecca a friend of yours?" Nathan asked as they moved toward the cake table. "She's been my client for 8 months, but she feels like a friend now. She's been so excited about today." Simone adjusted one of the flowers on the 3-tier cake, then stepped back to examine her work. "She told me her biggest worry was that her guests wouldn't have fun, which is why I noticed you looking uncomfortable. She'd be heartbroken if anyone felt out of place at her wedding." The genuine care in Simone's voice made Nathan's chest warm. "She seems lucky to have you coordinating." "I love what I do. There's something magical about helping people celebrate the most important day of their lives." Simone looked at him curiously. "What about you? How do you know Rebecca?" Nathan hesitated. The truth was that Rebecca had been his executive assistant for 2 years, managing his schedule and handling his business communications. But admitting that would reveal who he was, and he wasn't ready to lose this feeling of normalcy. "We work together," he said carefully. "She's very organized." "That's an understatement. She sent me 17 different versions of the seating chart." Simone laughed, a sound that made Nathan want to hear it again. "But she's also one of the sweetest people I've ever worked with. She sends thank you cards for everything and always asks about my family." As they continued their rounds, Nathan found himself relaxing for the first time in months. Simone introduced him to vendors, included him in small decisions about music timing and lighting adjustments, and made him feel genuinely useful. When a flower arrangement toppled over, he helped her fix it without being asked. When she needed someone to hold her tablet while she adjusted a microphone, he was there. "You're pretty good at this," Simone observed as they ensured the dance floor was clear of obstacles. "Have you done event coordination before?" "No, but I'm good at logistics and problem solving. It's similar to project management." Nathan caught himself before saying more about his business experience. "Well, you're officially my favorite wedding guest assistant ever. Most people just complain about the music or ask when dinner will be served." They were interrupted by a commotion near the gift table. A middle-aged woman in an expensive dress was loudly demanding to know where Nathan Cross was sitting so she could introduce herself. Nathan's stomach dropped, but Simone smoothly stepped between them. "I'm sorry, but I need to focus on wedding coordination right now. If you're looking for someone specific, I suggest checking with the bride's family after the ceremony." Her voice remained polite but firm. The woman looked frustrated but moved away, and Nathan realized he'd been holding his breath. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "Doing my job." Simone checked her watch. "Speaking of which, we need to get everyone seated for the ceremony. Ready to pretend to be my devoted date for the next hour?" Nathan looked at her earnest face, at the kindness in her eyes that asked for nothing in return, and felt something shift inside his chest. More than ready. As they found seats in the middle section, away from the gawking strangers, Nathan realized this was the first time in years he'd attended a social event without calculating exit strategies or worrying about his security team's positioning. Simone had given him something precious. The chance to just be Nathan, not the billionaire CEO, not the target, not the headline. Just a man sitting next to a beautiful, kind woman at a wedding. When the bride appeared at the back of the aisle, radiant in her white gown, Nathan felt genuine happiness for Rebecca. But more than that, he felt grateful to be experiencing this moment without the wall of isolation that usually surrounded him. "She looks beautiful," Simone whispered, tears forming in her eyes. "She does," Nathan agreed, but he found himself looking at Simone instead of the bride. Maybe kindness really could change everything. Maybe one person's generosity could remind him what it felt like to be human. As the ceremony began, Nathan made a decision. Whatever happened next, he would treasure this afternoon when a stranger chose to help him instead of using him. It was more than he'd dared to hope for in a very long time. The ceremony was beautiful, filled with heartfelt vows and happy tears, but Nathan found himself more captivated by Simone's quiet reactions. She dabbed at her eyes during the ring exchange and smiled radiantly when the couple kissed. Her joy was infectious, reminding him why people bothered with love at all. As guests moved to the cocktail hour, Simone immediately shifted back into coordinator mode. "Time for the real work," she said, checking her tablet. "The photographer wants to do family photos, the band needs their sound check, and I have to make sure the cocktail service is running smoothly. What can I do to help?" Nathan asked, surprising himself with how much he meant it. "Just stay close and keep being my buffer against anyone who looks like they want to cause drama." Simone grinned. "Plus, I could use someone to tell me if anything looks off from a guest's perspective." They spent the next hour weaving through the reception area, with Simone orchestrating every detail while Nathan observed and occasionally offered suggestions. When he noticed that the bar line was getting long, she quickly opened a second service station. When he pointed out that some elderly guests seemed uncomfortable standing, she arranged additional seating. "You have a good eye for this," Simone said as they watched guests happily mingling with drinks in hand. "Are you sure you're not in the hospitality business?" Nathan nearly choked on his sparkling water. His hotel chain was one of the largest in the country, but admitting that would blow his cover completely. "I just pay attention to how people respond to their environment. That's exactly what good event planning is about. You'd be surprised how many people miss the obvious stuff." Simone adjusted a flower arrangement that had been knocked askew. "Like that woman over there in the purple dress. She's been standing alone for 15 minutes, looking uncomfortable. As her fake boyfriend, what do you think we should do?" Nathan looked where she pointed and saw an older woman clutching her purse, clearly feeling out of place. Without thinking, he started walking toward her. "Excuse me," he said gently. "I don't think we've met. I'm Nathan and this is Simone." The woman's face lit up with relief. "Oh, hello. I'm Margaret, Rebecca's great aunt. I don't know many people here and I was feeling a bit lost. Would you like to sit with us?" Simone offered immediately. "We were just about to find a table and we'd love the company." As they helped Margaret get settled with a plate of appetizers and introduced her to other guests, Nathan realized he was genuinely enjoying himself. There was no pressure, no one trying to impress him or get something from him. Just simple human kindness being passed from person to person. "You're naturals at this," Margaret said gratefully. "You two make such a lovely couple." Nathan felt his cheeks warm, but Simone handled it with grace. "Thank you, that's so sweet. We're just happy Rebecca found her perfect match." When the dinner service began, Nathan and Simone were seated at a table with other wedding industry professionals. A photographer, a florist, and a musician. The conversation flowed easily, covering everything from favorite venues to funny wedding mishaps. The worst was when the ring bearer's dog ate the actual wedding rings right before the ceremony, the photographer shared. "We had to use the backup rings from the jewelry store down the street. I once had a bride's veil catch fire from a Unity candle," the florist added. "Thank goodness for quick reflexes and good fire safety protocols." Nathan found himself laughing genuinely, sharing a story about a business dinner where the restaurant's fire alarm went off mid-presentation. He carefully avoided mentioning that it was a multi-million-dollar merger negotiation, but the story still got appreciative chuckles. "What do you do for work, Nathan?" the musician asked. "I'm in business management," Nathan replied vaguely, catching Simone's curious glance. "That covers a lot of ground," she said with a teasing smile. "Anything specific?" Nathan felt trapped but tried to stay as close to the truth as possible. "I help companies run more efficiently. Process improvement, resource allocation, that sort of thing." It wasn't technically a lie. As CEO, he did all of those things just on a much larger scale than he was implying. The conversation moved on, but Nathan noticed Simone watching him thoughtfully. He hoped his evasiveness wasn't making her suspicious. The last thing he wanted was to lose this perfect afternoon by raising questions about his identity. When the band started playing for dancing, Simone excused herself to check on the technical setup. Nathan used the moment to help Margaret back to her seat and get her a fresh drink. "You're very thoughtful," Margaret observed. "Simone is lucky to have found someone who's both handsome and kind." "Actually, we're not." Nathan started, then stopped. The lie felt wrong, but the truth was complicated. "We're still figuring things out. The best relationships grow naturally," Margaret said wisely. "Don't rush it, but don't let fear hold you back either. Life's too short for hesitation when something feels right." Before Nathan could respond, Simone returned with a pleased expression. Everything's perfect. The band is ready, the photographer has all the shots Rebecca wanted, and the cake cutting is scheduled for exactly the right moment to maximize the sunset lighting. You've thought of everything, Nathan said admiringly. It's my job to think of everything. Simone's smile was tired but satisfied. Rebecca deserves a perfect day, and I think we've delivered it. As if on cue, the bride and groom took the dance floor for their first dance, looking radiant and completely absorbed in each other. The guests gathered around, creating a circle of love and support that made Nathan's throat tight with unexpected emotion. They look happy, he said quietly. They are happy, Simone replied. And they're going to stay that way because they choose each other every day, not just today. Nathan looked at her profile in the soft evening light, at the contentment in her expression as she watched her hard work come to fruition. He'd never met anyone quite like her, someone who found genuine joy in other people's happiness. For a moment, he let himself imagine what it might be like to have someone care about his happiness the way Simone cared about Rebecca's. Someone who would coordinate the details, smooth over the rough patches, and stand by him not because of his money but because of who he was as a person. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. As the song ended and other couples joined the dance floor, Simone turned to him with a mischievous look. Ready for the next part of our performance? She asked, extending her hand. Nathan's heart hammered as he realized she was asking him to dance. In front of everyone. As her pretend boyfriend. But looking into her warm brown eyes, he found himself nodding. Lead the way, he said, taking her hand and hoping she couldn't feel how nervous he suddenly was. Because somewhere between the ceremony and the cocktail hour, between helping Margaret and sharing stories, this had stopped feeling like pretense. And that scared him more than any business negotiation ever had. The dance floor was crowded with couples swaying to a slow jazz standard, creating the perfect cover for Nathan and Simone to blend in. As she moved into his arms, Nathan realized he hadn't danced with someone in over 2 years. The last time had been with Cassandra at a charity gala, and even then it had felt like a performance for the cameras. This was different. Simone was relaxed and natural, following his lead without trying to impress anyone watching. She smelled like lavender and vanilla, and her hand in his felt perfectly right. You're a good dancer, she said, sounding surprised. Mandatory business school skill, Nathan replied, then caught himself. That was too revealing. I mean, I took lessons for a work event once. Simone raised an eyebrow but didn't press. Well, whoever taught you knew what they were doing. I was expecting to get my toes stepped on. The night is young, Nathan said, earning a laugh that made his chest warm. They danced in comfortable silence for a few moments, and Nathan found himself studying her face. She had tiny gold flecks in her brown eyes and a small scar above her left eyebrow that he wanted to ask about. Her smile was genuine, not the practiced expression he was used to seeing from women who wanted something from him. Can I ask you something? Simone said as the song transitioned to something a bit more upbeat. Nathan's defenses rose automatically. Sure. Why were you really sitting alone today? You seem like someone who'd have friends or family at a wedding. The question was gentle but direct, and Nathan struggled with how to answer. The truth was too complicated, but he didn't want to lie to her more than necessary. I don't socialize much, he said finally. Work keeps me busy and I've had some bad experiences with people who weren't what they seemed. Simone's expression softened. People who hurt you? Nathan nodded, surprised by how much he wanted to tell her everything. Something like that. I'm sorry. That's hard to get past. Simone's voice held genuine sympathy. It makes it tough to trust new people. What about you? Nathan asked, desperate to shift the focus away from his secrets. Why wedding coordination? That seems like it would require trusting people constantly. Because I believe in love, Simone said simply. Even when it's messy and complicated and people make mistakes. I've seen too many couples overcome impossible odds to give up on the idea that two people can choose to build something beautiful together. Even after seeing weddings that don't work out? Especially then. Because I also see the ones that do work out and they're magic. Simone spun under his arm, then came back to him with a smile. Like Rebecca and James. They met during the worst year of both their lives. She was going through a nasty divorce, he was dealing with his mother's cancer diagnosis. But somehow they found each other and decided that together they could handle whatever came next. Nathan felt a pang of envy. That sounds rare. It is. But not impossible. Simone looked directly at him. You just have to be brave enough to let someone see the real you even when it's scary. The words hit Nathan like a physical blow. When was the last time anyone had seen the real him? He'd been hiding behind his wealth and position for so long that he wasn't sure the real Nathan even existed anymore. What if the real you isn't very interesting? He asked, only half joking. Everyone's interesting if you look close enough. Take you for example. Nathan's heart stopped. What about me? You notice things other people miss. You helped Margaret without being asked. You genuinely care about whether Rebecca's having a good wedding. And you're here dancing with me instead of trying to network or show off. Simone's smile was warm. Those aren't the actions of an uninteresting person. Nathan felt something crack open in his chest, something that had been locked away since Cassandra's betrayal. You don't know me very well. No, but I know enough to see that you're kind. And kindness is never boring. The song ended, but neither of them moved apart. Nathan found himself lost in Simone's eyes, wondering what it would be like to tell her everything. To trust someone completely for the first time in years. Simone, I need to tell you something. There you are. Rebecca appeared beside them, radiant in her wedding dress and clearly floating on happiness. Nathan, I'm so glad you came. And Simone, everything is absolutely perfect. Thank you for making today so beautiful. It's all you and James, Simone said, immediately shifting into professional mode. You two are what makes it special. Rebecca hugged them both, then lowered her voice conspiratorially. I have to say, I'm thrilled to see you two together. Nathan's been alone too long, and Simone, you deserve someone who appreciates how amazing you are. Nathan felt his cheeks burn. Rebecca. Don't be shy. You both look happy and that makes me happy. Rebecca squeezed Simone's hand. Take care of him, okay? He's one of the good ones even if he doesn't believe it. Before either of them could correct her assumption, Rebecca was swept away by other well-wishers, leaving Nathan and Simone standing awkwardly on the edge of the dance floor. She seems to know you pretty well, Simone observed. We've worked together for a while, Nathan said carefully. She's very perceptive. And she thinks you don't believe you're one of the good ones. Simone's voice was gentle. Why is that? Nathan looked around at the celebration surrounding them, at all the happy couples and families sharing this joyful moment, and felt the weight of his isolation pressing down on him again. Because good people don't usually end up as alone as I am, he said quietly. Simone stepped closer, her hand finding his arm. Maybe you're not alone because you're not good. Maybe you're alone because you haven't found your person yet. The hope in her voice made Nathan's chest tight. You really believe that? I have to. Otherwise, what's the point of any of this? Simone gestured at the wedding around them. Love exists, Nathan. Real love, not the kind that wants something from you or tries to change you. The kind that sees who you really are and chooses you anyway. Nathan stared at her, wondering if she could possibly mean what she seemed to be implying. Was this beautiful, kind woman actually interested in him for himself? Without knowing about his money or his success. Dance with me again? He asked, his voice rougher than he intended. I thought you'd never ask, Simone replied, stepping back into his arms. As they moved together to the next song, Nathan allowed himself to imagine just for a moment what it might be like if this were real. If he could have someone like Simone in his life, someone who saw past the surface and cared about the man underneath. The thought terrified and exhilarated him in equal measure. But for now he would just dance and pretend and let himself feel hopeful for the first time in far too long. As the evening progressed, Nathan found himself completely absorbed in Simone's company. They danced through several songs, their conversation flowing easily between light teasing and surprisingly deep moments. When a particularly energetic song came on, Simone laughed and pulled him into a more spirited dance, not caring who was watching. You're full of surprises, Nathan said, slightly breathless as he spun her around. Good surprises or bad surprises? Simone asked, her cheeks flushed and her eyes bright. Definitely good. Nathan pulled her closer as the music slowed again. I can't remember the last time I enjoyed myself this much at a social event. That's sad, Simone said, but her tone was sympathetic rather than pitying. Everyone should have fun sometimes. It's complicated when... Nathan trailed off, realizing he'd almost revealed too much again. When what? Nathan looked down at her upturned face, at the genuine curiosity and care in her expression, and felt his carefully constructed walls crumbling. When people have expectations about who you should be. Simone nodded thoughtfully. I get that. People see the wedding coordinator and assume I'm this super romantic person who believes in fairy tales and happily ever after. Aren't you? I believe in love, but I'm not naive about it. I know it takes work and compromise and choosing each other every day, even when it's hard. Simone's voice grew softer. I've seen enough marriages fall apart to know that the wedding is just the beginning. The real relationship starts the next day. Nathan was struck by her maturity and realism. Most of the women he'd dated had seemed to view relationships as transactions or competitions, not as ongoing commitments requiring effort from both sides. What about you? Simone asked. What do people expect from you that makes socializing so complicated? Nathan felt the familiar panic rise in his chest. How could he explain that people expected him to be a walking ATM, a networking opportunity, a trophy boyfriend? That every conversation came with hidden agendas and calculated moves? They expect me to be someone I'm not comfortable being, he said finally. Then don't be that person tonight. Just be Nathan, whoever that is. The simplicity of her suggestion took his breath away. When was the last time someone had given him permission to just be himself? I'm not sure I remember how, he admitted. Simone stopped dancing and looked directly at him. Start with this. What do you want to do right now in this moment without thinking about what anyone else expects? Nathan stared at her, his heart hammering. What he wanted was to kiss her, to forget about the pretense and the lies and the inevitable moment when his real identity would ruin everything. He wanted to believe that this connection between them was real and sustainable. But he couldn't say that. Not yet. I want to keep dancing with you, he said instead, which was also true. Simone's smile was radiant. Then that's what we'll do. They swayed together through 2 more songs, talking quietly about everything and nothing. Simone told him about her dream of eventually opening her own event planning company, specializing in intimate celebrations rather than massive productions. Nathan shared his love of travel, carefully editing out the private jets and 5-star resorts, focusing instead on the small moments that had moved him in different places. I love how you notice details, Simone said when he described the way morning light hit a cathedral in Barcelona. Most people rush through experiences without really seeing them. Maybe I see them because I'm usually alone, Nathan said without thinking. Simone's expression grew concerned. You travel alone a lot? Work travel, Nathan said quickly. It's not very social. That sounds lonely. It was lonely, Nathan realized. Even when he traveled with his security team and assistants, he was fundamentally alone with his thoughts and decisions. He'd grown so accustomed to the isolation that he'd forgotten how it felt to share experiences with someone else. What about you? He asked. Do you travel much? Not as much as I'd like. Building a business keeps me pretty tied to the city. But someday I want to see those cathedrals you mentioned, and maybe plan some destination weddings in beautiful places. Nathan found himself imagining showing her those places, seeing her reaction to the sunrise over Machu Picchu or the northern lights in Iceland. The thought was so appealing that it scared him. I'd like to show you. He began, then stopped, realizing how presumptuous that sounded. Show me what? Nathan felt his cheeks heat. Nothing. I was just thinking out loud. But Simone stepped closer, her voice gentle. Nathan, are you always this careful about what you say? The question hit him like a punch to the gut. Yes, he was always careful. Every word was calculated, every response filtered through multiple considerations about how it might be interpreted or used against him later. I have to be, he said quietly. Why? Because I'm worth $2 billion and every careless word could end up in a lawsuit or a tabloid headline, Nathan thought. Because I've learned that casual comments can be twisted into weapons. Because I can't afford to be spontaneous or vulnerable or real. Because words have consequences, he said instead. Simone studied his face with an intensity that made him nervous. What happened to you? The direct question caught Nathan off guard. For a moment he considered telling her everything. About Cassandra, about the constant pressure, about the loneliness that came with never being sure if people liked him for himself or his bank account. But the music stopped, and the spell was broken as the band announced they were taking a short break. Around them, guests began moving toward the bar and dessert station. I should check on the cake-cutting timeline, Simone said, but she didn't move away from him immediately. Of course. Nathan stepped back, giving her space to return to work mode. Thank you for the dances. Thank you for being such a good pretend boyfriend. Simone's smile was teasing, but there was something else in her eyes, something that looked almost like regret. As she walked away to coordinate the next phase of the reception, Nathan realized that the pretense was becoming increasingly difficult to maintain. Not because he was bad at lying, but because what he felt for Simone was starting to feel very real. He watched her efficiently organize the cake cutting, ensuring the photographer had the best angles and the couple was positioned perfectly for both pictures and guest viewing. She was graceful under pressure, kind to everyone she interacted with, and completely absorbed in making other people happy. Nathan had never wanted to be real with someone as much as he wanted to be real with her. But being real meant risking everything, and Nathan wasn't sure he was brave enough for that yet. As Rebecca and James prepared to cut their cake, Nathan found himself wondering if he would ever be brave enough to stop pretending and start living. The thought both thrilled and terrified him. The next morning, Nathan woke up in his penthouse apartment feeling something he hadn't experienced in years. Genuine disappointment that an evening had ended. He'd stayed at the wedding until the very last dance, reluctant to break the spell that had made him feel normal for a few precious hours. Simone had exchanged numbers with him as they said goodbye, mentioning that she might need his help with future boyfriend emergencies, in a tone that was half joking, half hopeful. Nathan had agreed immediately, despite knowing it would only make his deception more complicated. Now, standing in his marble and glass kitchen with its view of the entire city, he felt the familiar weight of his isolation settling back over him. His housekeeper had left breakfast prepared, his assistant had already sent his schedule for the week, and his phone showed 17 missed calls from business associates who'd seen the society page photos of him at the wedding. Nathan ignored the calls and focused on the one text message that mattered. "Simone, thank you again for yesterday. Rebecca said it was the perfect wedding, and I couldn't have done it without my amazing pretend boyfriend. Coffee sometime to debrief?" Nathan stared at the message for a full minute, his thumb hovering over the keyboard. He should make an excuse, let the connection fade and return to his safe but lonely routine. Getting more involved with Simone would only lead to heartbreak for both of them when the truth inevitably came out. But the memory of her laugh, of the way she'd looked at him during their slow dances, made the choice for him. "Nathan, I'd love coffee. When and where?" Her response came quickly. "Simone, there's a little cafe called Beans and Dreams on 5th Street. Tomorrow at 10? Nathan knew the place. It was small and cozy, the kind of neighborhood spot where a billionaire CEO would never normally be seen. Perfect for maintaining his cover. "Nathan, perfect. See you there." The next 24 hours crawled by. Nathan tried to focus on work, reviewing quarterly reports and sitting through board meetings, but his mind kept drifting to Simone. He found himself wondering what she was doing, whether she was thinking about him and what they would talk about over coffee. When he finally walked into Beans and Dreams the next morning, Simone was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 steaming mugs and a plate of pastries. She traded her professional wedding coordinator outfit for jeans and a soft blue sweater that brought out her eyes. "I took the liberty of ordering," she said as he sat down. "Black coffee and a blueberry scone. Was I right?" Nathan was touched that she paid attention to his preferences. "Perfect. How did you know?" "I notice things too," Simone said with a smile. "Especially about people I'm pretending to date." They fell into easy conversation about the wedding, laughing over small mishaps that the guests had never noticed and celebrating the moments that had gone perfectly. Nathan found himself relaxing into the rhythm of normal conversation, the kind he hadn't had with anyone in years. "Rebecca sent me the sweetest thank you note this morning," Simone said, pulling out her phone to show him. "She said seeing you happy made her day even more special." Nathan read the message, feeling a pang of guilt about the deception. Rebecca genuinely cared about his well-being, and she'd been thrilled to see him with someone. What would she think when she found out it was all pretense? "She's very thoughtful," Nathan said carefully. "She mentioned that you don't date much. Said she's been worried about you being too isolated." Nathan's defenses rose automatically. "She told you that?" "Not in a gossipy way. She cares about you, Nathan. She wants you to be happy." Simone's voice was gentle. "Is it really that hard for you to believe that people might worry about your well-being without having ulterior motives?" The question hit Nathan like a physical blow. Yes, it was that hard to believe. Years of being used and manipulated had trained him to look for hidden agendas in every kind gesture. "I've learned to be cautious," he said finally. "I understand caution. But there's a difference between being careful and shutting everyone out completely." Before Nathan could respond, Simone's phone buzzed with a call. She glanced at it and sighed. "I'm sorry, I need to take this. It's a client emergency." She answered with her professional voice. "Hello, Mrs. Davidson. What can I do for you?" Nathan listened to half of a conversation about a corporate event that was falling apart due to vendor cancellations. Simone handled it with calm efficiency, but he could see the stress in her expression. "I'll figure something out and call you back within the hour," she said finally, ending the call and rubbing her temples. "Problem?" Nathan asked. "Major problem. I have a corporate anniversary party this weekend, and my caterer and florist both just canceled due to a double booking conflict. It's for 200 people and the client is demanding." Nathan's business instincts kicked in immediately. What kind of corporate event? Johnson Industries' 25th anniversary. They want elegant but not stuffy, sophisticated but not pretentious. The CEO is very particular about appearances. Nathan knew Johnson Industries. It was a mid-sized manufacturing company with a solid reputation, owned by a man who valued quality and reliability above flashiness. I might be able to help, Nathan said impulsively. Simone looked at him skeptically. Unless you know premium caterers and florists who take last-minute bookings, I don't think. Actually, I do. Nathan pulled out his phone. I have some connections in the hospitality industry. Let me make a few calls. Within 30 minutes, Nathan had secured commitments from the head chef at one of the city's finest hotels and a florist who usually only worked with A-list clients. Both agreed to handle Simone's event as a personal favor to Nathan, asking no questions about why he was calling in favors for a small wedding planning company. Simone stared at him in amazement. How did you do that? Nathan shrugged, trying to look casual. Like I said, I have some connections. Those aren't just connections, Nathan. The chef at the Meridian Hotel doesn't take personal calls from random business consultants. And Petals and Pearls has a 6-month waiting list. Nathan felt panic rising. He'd gotten carried away trying to help her and had blown his cover completely. I do a lot of networking, he said weakly. Simone studied his face intently. Nathan, who are you really? The direct question hung between them, loaded with implications. Nathan could see that she was starting to piece things together, probably remembering the whispers at the wedding and his evasive answers about his work. He opened his mouth to tell her everything, to confess about the money and the deception and hope that she would understand. But his phone rang before he could speak. I'm sorry, I have to take this, he said, seeing his assistant's number. It's urgent. He stepped outside to answer, and Rebecca's voice was tense with worry. Nathan, there's a problem. The Henderson merger is falling apart, and they're demanding a face-to-face meeting this afternoon or they're walking away. I know you're trying to keep a low profile, but this could cost us $300 million. Nathan closed his eyes, feeling the weight of his real life crashing back down on him. He was the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation, and hundreds of people depended on his decisions. He couldn't pretend to be a normal guy forever. Schedule the meeting, he said quietly. I'll be there in an hour. When he returned to the table, Simone was watching him with an unreadable expression. I have to go, Nathan said. Work emergency. Of course. Simone's voice was cool. Thank you for helping with the caterer and florist. I'll pay you back for any deposits you covered. That's not necessary. Yes, it is. I don't like owing people, especially people I don't really know. The words stung, but Nathan couldn't blame her for being suspicious. He'd been lying to her from the beginning, and she was starting to figure it out. Simone, It's okay, Nathan. We both know this was just pretense. Her smile was polite but distant. Thank you for a lovely evening and for helping with my crisis. I hope your work emergency resolves itself. As Nathan walked away from the cafe, he felt like he was losing something precious before he'd ever really had it. Simone was pulling back, protecting herself from whatever she sensed he was hiding. And the worst part was he couldn't blame her. But he also couldn't stop wanting to find a way to make it real. 3 days passed without contact, and Nathan found himself checking his phone constantly for messages from Simone. He'd thrown himself into work, successfully saving the Henderson merger and handling 2 other crisis situations, but nothing felt as important as the conversation he'd left unfinished at the cafe. On Thursday evening, his phone finally buzzed with her number. Simone, the Johnson Industries event is tomorrow night. Would you like to be my date? For real this time, not pretense. I'd like to see who you really are. Nathan stared at the message for 10 minutes, his heart racing. She was giving him a chance to be honest, to stop hiding behind his careful evasions. But attending a corporate event carried huge risks. What if someone recognized him? What if his presence drew unwanted attention to Simone's business? But the alternative was losing her completely, and that felt worse than any professional risk. Nathan, yes. What should I know about the event? Simone, cocktail attire, 7 p.m. at the Riverside Pavilion. And Nathan? No more secrets. I'm tired of wondering who I'm talking to. Nathan's chest tightened. She deserved the truth, but he wasn't sure how to tell her without destroying what they had. He spent the next day agonizing over how to handle the conversation, practicing different ways to explain his situation. When he arrived at the Riverside Pavilion that evening, Simone took his breath away. She wore a simple black dress that was elegant without being flashy, and her hair was styled in soft waves around her face. She looked beautiful and professional and completely out of his league. "You look stunning," Nathan said, meaning it completely. "Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself." Simone's smile was warm but guarded. "Ready to meet the demanding Mr. Johnson?" As they walked into the event, Nathan was relieved to see that it was a more intimate gathering than he'd expected. About 150 people mingled in the beautifully decorated space, with the catering and floral arrangements he'd helped secure, creating exactly the sophisticated but approachable atmosphere Simone had described. "This is incredible," Nathan said, genuinely impressed. "You've created the perfect environment." "We created it," Simone corrected. "I couldn't have pulled this off without your connections." Before Nathan could respond, a distinguished older man approached them with a welcoming smile. "You must be Simone. I'm Robert Johnson, and I cannot thank you enough for saving our celebration. When our original vendors canceled, I thought we'd have to serve pizza and call it good." "It was my pleasure, Mr. Johnson. I'd like you to meet Nathan Cross, my partner for the evening." Nathan shook Johnson's hand, grateful that Simone hadn't tried to define their relationship more specifically. "Nathan Cross." Johnson's expression shifted slightly. "That's an interesting coincidence. We've been trying to get a meeting with Nathan Cross, the CEO of Cross Industries, for months. Our companies would be perfect strategic partners." Nathan felt the blood drain from his face. Of all the possible complications, he hadn't considered that Johnson might actually want to do business with him. "Common name," Nathan managed. But Johnson was studying his face more carefully. "You know, you look remarkably similar to the photos I've seen. Same eyes, same jawline." Simone looked between them, confusion clear in her expression. "What are you talking about?" "Cross Industries," Johnson explained. "One of the largest hospitality and real estate conglomerates in the country. The CEO is notoriously private, but he's built an incredible company. His hotels are some of the finest in the world." Nathan watched Simone's face as understanding dawned. Her eyes widened, then narrowed, and he could see the exact moment she put all the pieces together. His evasive answers about work, his mysterious connections, the way people had stared at him at the wedding. "If you'll excuse us for a moment," Simone said to Johnson, her voice carefully controlled. "I need to speak with my partner privately." She walked toward a quiet corner of the venue and Nathan followed, his heart hammering. When they were out of earshot, she turned to face him with an expression he couldn't read. "Nathan Cross, CEO of Cross Industries. Worth approximately $2 billion according to Forbes magazine." Her voice was calm, but Nathan could see the hurt in her eyes. "Did I get that right?" "Simone, I can explain." "Can you?" "Because I'm having trouble understanding why a billionaire needed my help to avoid attention at a wedding. Or why he lied to me for over a week about who he was." Nathan felt everything he'd feared would happen crashing down around him. "I didn't want you to treat me differently." "Differently than what?" "Honestly?" Simone's composure was cracking. "You let me worry about paying for those vendors, Nathan. You watched me stress about my small business problems while you could have solved them with pocket change. That's exactly why I didn't tell you." Nathan stepped closer, desperate to make her understand. "Everyone wants something from me, Simone. Money, connections, business opportunities. You were the first person in years who just wanted to help me, who saw me as a person instead of a bank account. So you decided to lie instead of trusting me to handle the truth?" The accusation hit Nathan like a physical blow because it was completely accurate. He had chosen deception over trust, protection over vulnerability. "I was scared," he admitted. "Scared that if you knew who I was, you'd either want something from me or decide I wasn't worth the complications that come with dating a public figure." Simone stared at him for a long moment, and Nathan could see her processing everything. Around them, the party continued, but it felt like they were in their own separate world. "The wedding," she said finally. "Those people who were staring at you taking pictures. They recognized me from magazine covers and news articles. It happens everywhere I go. And you thought I was part of that? Another person trying to use you?" Nathan's throat was tight. "Not after I got to know you. But by then I was in too deep. I didn't know how to tell you without ruining everything." Simone looked away and Nathan could see tears forming in her eyes. "You made that choice for both of us, Nathan. You decided I couldn't handle your truth, and you built our entire connection on a lie." "Not a lie," Nathan said desperately. "Everything I told you about myself was true. I just left out some details." "Some details?" Simone's voice rose slightly. "You left out that you're one of the most powerful men in the country. That's not a detail, Nathan, that's your entire reality. Nathan realized that his greatest fear was coming true. The money and power that isolated him from everyone else had poisoned this relationship too, just in a different way than usual. What do you want me to say, Simone? That I wish I wasn't wealthy? That I'd give it all up to be normal? Nathan ran his hands through his hair. I can't change who I am, and I can't change the fact that my life comes with complications. I'm not asking you to change who you are. I'm asking you to trust me enough to be honest about it. They stood there looking at each other, the weight of the revelation hanging between them. Nathan could see that he was losing her, that his deception had damaged something that might have been beautiful if he'd handled it differently. I'm sorry, he said quietly. You're right, and I'm sorry. I should have trusted you. Simone wiped her eyes carefully, trying not to disturb her makeup. I need some time to think about this, Nathan. This whole thing, who you really are, what it means. Of course. I understand. Nathan felt his heart breaking, but he forced himself to stay calm. What do you want to do about tonight? I can leave if that would be easier. Simone looked around at the successful event, at the guests enjoying the food and decorations they'd arranged together. Stay. We committed to being partners tonight, and I honor my commitments. But after this. She didn't finish the sentence, but Nathan understood. After tonight, she would decide whether a billionaire CEO and a wedding planner could find a way to build something real together. As they returned to the party, Nathan realized that for the first time in his life, his wealth felt like a liability instead of an asset. And he had no idea how to fix what he'd broken. Despite the tension between them, Nathan and Simone presented a united front for the remainder of the Johnson Industries event. They moved through the party like a real couple, with Simone introducing Nathan to key guests and Nathan offering thoughtful observations about the business conversations he overheard. Robert Johnson approached them again near the end of the evening, this time with his wife and several other executives. Simone, this has been absolutely perfect. You've exceeded every expectation. Johnson turned to Nathan with renewed interest. And I have to ask again, are you sure you're not the Nathan Cross we've been trying to reach? Nathan felt Simone's eyes on him and made a decision. He was tired of lying, especially to her. I am, he said simply. Nathan Cross, CEO of Cross Industries. Johnson's face lit up with excitement, but Nathan held up a hand. However, tonight I'm here as Simone's partner, not in any business capacity. I hope you can respect that. Of course, Johnson said quickly. But perhaps we could arrange a proper meeting next week? I really do think our companies could benefit from a partnership. Have your people call my assistant. Rebecca Martinez will set something up. Nathan's voice was polite but firm. Tonight is about celebrating your anniversary, not conducting business. After Johnson moved away, clearly thrilled with the connection, Simone looked at Nathan with something that might have been admiration. That was well handled, she said quietly. I meant what I said. Tonight is about you and your success, not my business interests. They spent the final hour of the event ensuring everything wrapped up smoothly. Nathan watched Simone coordinate the cleanup, tip the staff generously from the client's budget, and personally thank every vendor. Her professionalism and genuine care for everyone involved reminded him why he'd been drawn to her in the first place. As they walked to the parking garage together, the silence between them was heavy with unresolved tension. Simone, Nathan began, then stopped. What could he say that would fix this? My car's over here, she said, pointing to a practical Honda Civic that was probably 5 years old. Nathan looked at his own car, a sleek black BMW that cost more than most people's annual salaries, and felt the gulf between their worlds more acutely than ever. Can we talk? He asked. Really talk, with complete honesty this time? Simone studied his face in the dim garage lighting. Not tonight, Nathan. I'm exhausted and I need to process everything. But tomorrow? She paused, seeming to make a decision. There's a charity gala tomorrow night. The Children's Hospital fundraiser. I have to work it, and I could use a date who knows how to handle high-profile events. Nathan was surprised by the invitation. Are you sure that's a good idea? There will be photographers, society reporters. I know exactly what it is. I've coordinated it for 3 years. Simone's voice was steady. If we're going to figure out whether this can work, I need to see you in your real world, not just the version you showed me. The thought terrified Nathan. The charity gala would be full of people who knew him, business associates and socialites who would scrutinize his choice of companion and draw conclusions about their relationship. It could get complicated, he warned. Everything about you is complicated, Nathan. That's what I'm trying to decide if I can handle. As Nathan drove home to his penthouse, his mind raced through all the ways the charity gala could go wrong. Simone would see him in his element, dealing with the pressures and expectations that came with his position. She'd witnessed firsthand how his wealth affected every interaction, how people treated him like a prize to be won rather than a person to be known. But she'd also see why he'd been so careful about revealing his identity. The charity gala would show her the fishbowl existence he lived, where every conversation was potentially a business negotiation and every relationship carried the risk of exploitation. The next evening, Nathan picked Simone up at her apartment, a modest but charming place in a converted Victorian house. She emerged wearing a stunning deep blue gown that he suspected had cost more than she usually spent on clothes. When he complimented her, she smiled but didn't meet his eyes. "Ready for this?" she asked as they approached the hotel hosting the gala. "Are you?" Nathan countered. "I guess we'll find out." The moment they walked into the ballroom, Nathan felt the familiar shift in energy that accompanied his public appearances. Conversations paused, heads turned, and he could see people reaching for their phones to discreetly photograph them. "Mr. Cross," a reporter approached immediately. "Can you tell us about your companion this evening?" "This is Simone Parker, one of the city's finest event coordinators," Nathan said smoothly. "She's actually working tonight, making sure this important fundraiser runs perfectly." It was a masterful deflection that positioned Simone as a professional rather than just his date, but Nathan could see her surprise at how easily he handled the media attention. As they moved through the crowd, Nathan introduced Simone to philanthropists, business leaders and city officials. He watched her navigate these conversations with grace, her natural warmth and intelligence shining through even in this intimidating environment. "She's lovely," commented Margaret Whitfield, the wife of a prominent banker. "How did you meet?" "At a wedding," Nathan replied. "She helped me when I needed it most." The answer was honest and seemed to satisfy most questioners, but Nathan could see Simone processing how his presence changed the dynamic of every interaction. People were more deferential to her, more interested in her business, more eager to make connections. "This is what it's always like, isn't it?" she murmured during a quiet moment. "People treating you like you're more important than everyone else in the room." "Usually worse," Nathan admitted. "Tonight's actually been relatively low-key." When the auction portion of the evening began, Nathan found himself bidding on several items, driven partly by genuine charitable feeling and partly by his desire to show Simone the positive side of his wealth. When the auctioneer announced a week at a luxury resort in Tuscany, Simone grabbed his arm. "Don't," she said quietly. "What?" "Don't bid on that thinking it's for me. I'm not here as your charity case or your prize." Nathan realized she was right. He'd been unconsciously trying to impress her with his generosity, falling into the same patterns that had driven away other women who'd felt overwhelmed by his resources. Instead, he bid on a scholarship fund for underprivileged children, something that mattered to him personally and didn't carry any implications about their relationship. As the evening wound down, Nathan could see that Simone was emotionally drained from navigating his world. The constant attention, the careful conversations, the weight of being scrutinized as his potential romantic interest had clearly taken a toll. "Thank you," he said as they walked to his car. "I know tonight wasn't easy." "It wasn't," Simone agreed. "But it was educational." Nathan wasn't sure if that was good or bad, but he didn't push for clarification. He'd learned enough about Simone to know that she needed time to process her thoughts before sharing them. As he dropped her off at her apartment, she turned to him with a serious expression. "I need a few days, Nathan, to think about everything I've learned and whether I can handle what a relationship with you would really look like." Nathan's heart sank, but he forced himself to nod. "I understand. Take all the time you need. Thank you for being honest tonight. For letting me see the real you even when it wasn't flattering." As Nathan drove away, he realized that showing Simone his world might have been the biggest mistake he'd made yet. Because now she knew exactly what she'd be signing up for if she chose to be with him. And he wasn't at all sure she would make that choice. Nathan didn't hear from Simone for 4 days. He threw himself into work, but found himself distracted during board meetings and conference calls, his mind drifting to memories of her laugh and the way she'd looked at him during their slow dance at the wedding. On Wednesday morning he was reviewing quarterly reports when Rebecca knocked on his office door. "Nathan, you have a visitor. Simone Parker is here to see you." Nathan's heart jumped. "Send her in." Simone entered his corner office looking professional in a tailored blazer and skirt, but Nathan could see the tension in her shoulders. She glanced around at the floor-to-ceiling windows with their view of the entire city, the expensive artwork, and the massive desk that screamed corporate power. "Impressive," she said, but her tone was neutral. "Please sit down." Nathan gestured to the comfortable seating area by the windows, away from the intimidating desk. "Can I get you anything? Coffee, water?" "I'm fine, thank you." Simone sat on the edge of the leather sofa, her posture formal. "I came to give you my answer." Nathan's stomach clenched. Her tone suggested this wasn't going to be the conversation he'd hoped for. "I've spent the last 4 days thinking about everything," Simone continued. "About the wedding, about who you really are, about what I saw at the charity gala." "And?" Simone looked directly at him, her brown eyes serious. "I can't do this, Nathan." The words hit Nathan like a physical blow. He'd been expecting it, but hearing it still felt like losing something precious. "Can I ask why?" "Because I don't think you really want a relationship, Nathan. I think you want the idea of one. You want someone who can see past your money and love you for yourself, but you're not willing to actually let anyone that close." Nathan started to protest, but Simone held up a hand. "You lied to me from the beginning. Not because you were protecting yourself from a gold digger, but because you were protecting yourself from having to be vulnerable. You chose deception over trust because deception felt safer." "That's not," Nathan began, then stopped. "Because she was right and they both knew it. At the charity gala, I watched you navigate that world with perfect control. You knew exactly what to say to everyone, exactly how to present yourself, exactly how to manage every interaction. It was masterful, but it was also completely calculated." Simone's voice grew softer. "I never saw the real you, Nathan. I saw the version of you that you thought I wanted to see." Nathan felt something breaking apart inside his chest. "Everything I shared with you was real. My feelings for you are real." "Are they? Or do you just like the idea of someone who doesn't want your money?" The question was like a scalpel, cutting straight to his deepest fears. Because Nathan wasn't entirely sure himself whether his feelings for Simone were genuine or just relief at finding someone who didn't immediately try to use him. "I don't know how to be in a relationship anymore," he admitted quietly. "I've spent so many years protecting myself that I'm not sure I know how to stop." "I know. And that's why this can't work." Simone's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "You need to figure out who you are when you're not protecting yourself, Nathan. You need to learn how to be vulnerable with someone without it being a performance or a calculation." Nathan stared out at the city spread below them, at the empire he'd built that had given him everything except the ability to connect with another human being. "What if I can't?" he asked. "What if I'm too damaged by all of this to ever have something real? Then you'll spend the rest of your life alone in this beautiful prison you've built." Simone stood up, smoothing her skirt. "But I don't think that's true. I think you're capable of real love, Nathan. You just have to be brave enough to risk it." As she moved toward the door, Nathan felt panic rising. "Simone, wait." She turned back to him, hope flickering in her eyes. "I don't want to lose you," Nathan said, his voice rough with emotion. "Tell me what you need. Tell me how to fix this. I need you to figure out how to be real with someone without lying about who you are. I need you to trust that the right person will love you for everything you are, including the complicated parts." Simone's smile was sad but genuine. "And I need you to do that work for yourself, not because you're trying to win me back. And if I do that work? Then maybe someday we can try again. But not now, Nathan. Right now, you're not ready for what I need from a partner." After she left, Nathan sat in his office for a long time, staring at the city he'd conquered but feeling more isolated than ever. Simone was right about everything, and that made her rejection hurt even more. He'd spent so many years building walls to protect himself that he'd forgotten how to build bridges to connect with others. His wealth had given him power and security, but it had also cost him the ability to be truly intimate with another person. For the first time in his adult life, Nathan wondered if all his success had been worth it if it meant spending the rest of his life alone. But as the afternoon sun slanted through his office windows, he found himself thinking about Simone's final words. She believed he was capable of real love. She thought he could learn to be vulnerable if he was brave enough to try. Maybe it wasn't too late to prove her right. Maybe there was still time to become the man she deserved, even if she was no longer willing to wait for him to figure it out. The thought terrified and exhilarated him in equal measure. But for the first time since Cassandra's betrayal, Nathan felt ready to take the risk of being real. 3 months after Simone walked out of his office, Nathan had made more changes to his life than he'd thought possible. He'd started seeing a therapist who specialized in helping successful people navigate relationships and vulnerability. He'd stepped back from some of his business responsibilities, promoting trusted executives to handle day-to-day operations while he focused on learning who he was outside of his corporate identity. Most importantly, he'd started volunteering at the Children's Hospital, the same charity where he'd taken Simone to that fateful gala. Working with kids who faced challenges much greater than his own had given him perspective on what really mattered in life. It was there, reading to a group of young patients, that he ran into Margaret, the elderly woman he and Simone had helped at Rebecca's wedding. "Nathan, what a wonderful surprise," Margaret said, settling into the chair beside him as he finished the story. "I volunteer here every Tuesday. I had no idea you did too." "I started a few months ago," Nathan replied, watching the children return to their rooms with smiles on their faces. "It helps me remember what's important." "And how are things with that lovely young woman? Simone, wasn't it?" Nathan's chest tightened. "We're not together anymore." Margaret's expression grew concerned. "Oh dear, I'm sorry to hear that. You two seem so right for each other." "She was right for me. I just wasn't ready to be right for her." "Wasn't ready or aren't ready?" The distinction hit Nathan like a revelation. For 3 months he'd been thinking about his relationship with Simone in past tense, as a failure he needed to learn from. But Margaret's question made him realize he'd been approaching it all wrong. "I think I might be ready now," he said slowly. "Then what are you doing sitting here talking to an old woman? Go tell her that." Nathan felt a surge of hope mixed with terror. What if she won't listen? What if I've missed my chance? "What if you haven't?" Margaret smiled. "Life's too short for what ifs, Nathan. Trust me, I know." That evening, Nathan found himself standing outside Simone's apartment building, his heart hammering with nervous energy. He'd spent hours planning what to say, but now that he was here, all his carefully prepared words seemed inadequate. He was about to lose his nerve when Simone emerged from the building, clearly heading out for the evening. She looked beautiful in a simple green dress, but Nathan could see the surprise and wariness in her eyes when she spotted him. "Nathan? What are you doing here?" "I needed to see you. To tell you that you were right about everything." Simone glanced around at the other pedestrians on the busy street. "This isn't really the place for that conversation." "Then come with me, please. Just give me 1 hour to show you how much I've changed." Something in his voice must have convinced her, because after a moment's hesitation, she nodded. Nathan led her to a small community garden a few blocks away, a quiet space with benches surrounded by flowering plants. It was the kind of place he never would have known about before he started volunteering, before he began exploring parts of the city beyond his usual haunts. "I've been thinking about what you said," Nathan began once they were seated. "About needing to figure out who I am when I'm not protecting myself." "And? You were right. I had no idea who that person was. I'd been hiding behind my wealth and position for so long that I'd forgotten there was anything else." Nathan took a deep breath. "So I've been working on it. Therapy, volunteering, stepping back from some of my business responsibilities. Learning how to be Nathan the person instead of Nathan the CEO." Simone studied his face carefully. "That's good, Nathan. I'm glad you're doing that work. But you don't need to report back to me about your progress." "I'm not reporting back. I'm asking for another chance." The words hung between them in the evening air. Simone looked away and Nathan could see her wrestling with her thoughts. "Nathan, I know you said I needed to do this work for myself, and I have. I'm happier now, more centered, more aware of what I actually want from life." Nathan leaned forward. "But doing that work also made me realize that what I want is you. Not the idea of you, not what you represent, but you specifically. Your kindness, your strength, your ability to see the best in people even when they can't see it themselves. How do I know this isn't just another performance? Another version of Nathan designed to get what you want?" The question was fair, and Nathan had been expecting it. "Because I'm not asking you to make a decision right now. I'm asking you to let me prove it to you over time." Nathan pulled out his phone and showed her a photo from the children's hospital. "This is who I am now. I volunteer every Tuesday and Thursday, reading to kids and helping with activities. I'm not doing it for publicity or tax benefits or to impress anyone. I'm doing it because it makes me feel like the person I want to be." Simone looked at the photo, her expression softening slightly. "I've also been working with a therapist on understanding why I found it so hard to trust you with the truth about my wealth. It wasn't really about protecting myself from gold diggers. It was about being terrified that the real me wasn't enough to hold someone's interest once the novelty wore off." "Nathan, let me finish, please." Nathan's voice was gentle but urgent. "I've learned that I can't build a real relationship on fear and control. I have to trust that the right person will love me for who I am, complications and all. And I believe you're that person, Simone. I believe we could build something beautiful together if you're willing to take the risk." Simone was quiet for a long moment, and Nathan forced himself to wait instead of rushing to fill the silence. "The children's hospital," she said finally. How long have you been volunteering there? 3 months. Every week since the day you walked out of my office. And the therapy? Same timeline. Dr. Richardson specializes in helping people in high-pressure careers learn how to have healthy relationships. Simone turned to face him fully. Why should I believe this isn't just another calculated move designed to get what you want? Nathan had been dreading this question, but he forced himself to answer with complete honesty. Because I'm not asking you to believe it. I'm asking you to let me prove it. Go slow, set boundaries, keep your guard up if you need to. But give me a chance to show you that I'm capable of the kind of real, honest relationship you deserve. And if I say no? The question was like a knife to his heart, but Nathan met her eyes steadily. Then I'll respect that decision and leave you alone. But I'll keep doing the work to become a better man, because that's who I want to be regardless of what happens between us. Simone stood up and walked to the edge of the garden, looking out at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the growing dusk. Nathan stayed on the bench, giving her space to think. When she finally turned back to him, there were tears in her eyes. I missed you, she said simply. Nathan's heart soared. I missed you too. Every day. If we do this, if we try again, things have to be different. Complete honesty even when it's uncomfortable. No more protecting me from who you really are. I promise. And we go slow. I need time to trust that this version of you is real and sustainable. As slow as you need. Simone walked back to the bench and sat down beside him, close enough that Nathan could smell her familiar lavender scent. I've been miserable without you, she admitted. I kept telling myself I made the right choice, but I missed talking to you. I missed the way you notice things other people miss. I missed dancing with you. Dance with me now, Nathan said impulsively. Here? There's no music. There's music everywhere if you listen for it. Nathan stood and extended his hand to her. Trust me? Simone looked at his outstretched hand for a moment, then smiled and took it. They swayed together in the quiet garden, with only the distant sounds of the city as their soundtrack. But it felt perfect to Nathan, like coming home after a long journey. I love you, he said quietly, the words coming from somewhere deeper than calculation or strategy. I love your strength and your kindness and the way you make me want to be better than I am. I love you too, Simone replied, her voice thick with emotion. I tried not to, but I couldn't stop. When they kissed, it felt like a new beginning. Not the desperate passion of people afraid of losing each other, but the gentle certainty of two people choosing to build something real together. As they walked back toward Simone's apartment, hand in hand under the streetlights, Nathan felt something he'd never experienced before, the quiet confidence of a man who knew he was exactly where he belonged. So what happens now? Simone asked. Now we figure it out together, Nathan replied. One honest conversation at a time. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, but it was something better. The beginning of a real love story, built on truth and trust and the courage to be vulnerable with each other. For Nathan Cross, billionaire CEO, that was worth more than all the money in the world.